Hello everybody, I am Ethan, your friendly China-based test driver. Myself and my fanny pack have undergone our 14 days of self-quarantine, and we're very excited to be outside and showing you another exciting Chinese market car. Today, we'll be exploring the exciting world of Chinese full electric vehicles with the Geely Geometry A. Now, Geely has announced that they're planning to sell this car in Europe, so what I'm trying to find out today is, should Europeans be excited to give it a try? Let's find out. Geometry is an all-new, all-electric sub-brand from Geely, the Chinese brand best known for buying Volvo, Lotus, and Proton over the course of the last decade, and one of China's most important automakers. The Geometry brand appeared almost out of nowhere when it debuted in Singapore last spring. But it's no surprise to those familiar with the Chinese auto market that Geely would be interested in starting its own all-electric vehicle line. Thanks to generous government subsidies, the Chinese electric car market is growing faster than that of any other country. While sales took a bit of a dip mid to late last year, it's safe to say that electric cars are here to stay in China. Geely describes the Geometry A as a high-end compact sedan. I don't know about you, but that makes me think this thing is being positioned to directly compete against cars like the Tesla Model 3. In fact, it's being described as just that by journalists all over the world. In terms of price, however, I think this car is much better positioned to compete with its domestic rivals than with Tesla. Starting price is around 28,000 euros before you take into account subsidies. On the outside, the Geometry A offers a futuristic, if a tad bland appearance. I like the forward angle of the headlights. No doubt they're intended to give the viewer the sense that the car is moving forward. But I think the leading edge of the hood goes just a little bit too far and makes it look as though it's drooping. One of the more obvious challenges with electric cars is that they do not necessitate huge grille openings in the front, because they don't have an incredibly hot internal combustion engine to cool. Getting rid of the traditional grille shape is great for aerodynamics, but it leaves the front end looking a bit empty. I'm confident, however, that the more electric cars I see on the road, the more I will get used to this kind of front end. But for now, it just looks a little bit plain. I think the side profile is probably the best view of the car. There is a very strong character line that starts at the tip of the hood and runs the length of the vehicle, terminating at the small rear spoiler that integrates into the rear deck lid. I think it looks great. My only quibble would be with the somewhat overwhelming number of styling elements going on below the door handles. Wish they could take some of the design elements from the lower doors and put it on the front end. The rear end is all Geely, looking remarkably similar to several other models. Not that that's a bad thing, it just means that Geely has developed a strong design language. If the front end of the Geometry A goes for minimalism and misses, I have to say that the interior nails it. I think that it has a pleasing combination of organic shapes and elements, like here around the air vents or on the steering wheel, combined with more straight lines and shapes that elicit a sense of technology, like up here on the dashboard, the honeycomb design, or here on the center console. Speaking of the center console, there is one small problem. The touch-sensitive buttons here are attractive and, frankly, very cool. However, when you get just a little bit of sunlight, they're almost invisible. And that includes the selection of your gear. The reverse, neutral, and drive lights are almost invisible when they get to be in direct sunlight, and that's not acceptable. Geely also made sure to include their signature Chinese styling elements in a few areas. No doubt this was a cost-cutting measure, as these same buttons and designs exist in pretty much every Geely model, but I was happy to see it applied here nonetheless. The two large screens do their jobs admirably, with good image quality and good responsiveness to touch commands. The center console has plenty of space for your stuff and a wireless charging pad. The cloth seats are comfortable, but I love cloth seats, so I may be biased. The only area where the interior will let you down is in terms of material quality. The plastics are hard and scratchy, especially on the dashboard. And the power-operated glove box is noisy and jerky when you open and close it. Rear seat space is pretty tight, but this is a compact car. The good thing is that the large rear glass makes it feel nice and airy back there. The Geometry A is offered with two powertrain packages, the standard range and the long range. Standard range models come with a 51.9 kilowatt-hour battery and a 410 kilometer range, while the long range comes with a 61.9 kilowatt-hour battery and a 500 kilometer range. I think it's worth noting that Geely is basing those ranges on the old NEDC standard, which was discontinued in Europe in favor of the supposedly more realistic WLTP standard. I suspect much shorter ranges on each vehicle under the more realistic WLTP standard. Think closer to 300 and 400 kilometers respectively. With a 0 to 100 kilometer per hour time of about 8 seconds, you're not expecting much in the way of performance from this car, and that's exactly what it delivers. It, off the line, feels pretty sprightly, but that's because it's an electric motor car that delivers all of its torque from 0 RPM on. So that's not particularly surprising. What is surprising to me is the suspension and the platform. I am impressed, frankly, with how well this car handles and feels on the road. It is very, very quiet, very well isolated. Going over speed bumps, potholes, and things, you get a feeling, it's there, but the suspension is pretty tight, pretty firm, but not hard. I think that you are also pretty isolated from the sounds of it. This is important in an electric car because you can't lean on the motor to cover up. You can't lean on the gas motor to cover up any kind of NVH that comes from the outside or through the suspension or anything. So that's very important. I would say, handling-wise, it's fine. The steering feel is pretty numb, not surprising actually, but direct. You don't have a lot of slop in your turns. You turn right, you go right. You turn left, you go left. It's not so bad. But I would say that overall, the suspension feels more like a German car, honestly, than I personally expected. I've driven some other Chinese cars, and I have been less than impressed. Some of them are overly soft, some of them are just harsh because the suspension feels like cheap. But this one is actually, it seems to be very well made. One thing I'm realizing, because I'm getting kind of one of my first tastes of driving an electric car, is that I think these cars are phenomenal for things like commuting. When you're in a car like this, where you don't have the NVH coming from a motor all the time, from a gas motor, it is so much easier to relax. I can speak softly with you right now, and I don't have to worry about yelling over the motor, or you just kind of get used to that background noise. And when you stop at a stoplight, it's there. When you hit the gas, it's there. But when you're just driving around an electric car, you're in traffic or something, and you're sitting there, and without realizing it, you kind of relax a little bit more. And it's just because you don't have that background noise anymore. So honestly, if I had a long commute that I had to do, I think an electric car would be the top of my list. Well, long in duration, not long in distance, because you always got to worry about range. So, should Europeans be excited for the Geely Geometry A? I think the answer is yes. While comparisons between this car and a Tesla Model 3 are skin deep at best, I do think that there is a market in Europe for a solidly built, decently powerful, and decently handling compact electric sedan. All right. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to you joining us next time.